The Forbidden Expedition. The sleek vessel Astral Seeker slipped silently through the darkness of space, its stealth systems operating at maximum capacity. Commander Zirax stood on the bridge, his four eyes focused on the blue-green planet growing larger in the viewscreen. His scaled skin shimmered with nervous energy, causing the luminescent patterns along his arms to pulse erratically. "Final approach to Sol 3, announced Elira, the ship's science officer. Her translucent tentacles danced across the control panel, each one tipped with sensitive neural clusters that interface directly with the ship's systems. "We've successfully avoided detection by the Coalition outposts near Jupiter." "Good," Zirax replied, mandibles clicking softly. "Maintain our current trajectory. And Elira, thank you for agreeing to this mission. I know the risks we're taking." The science officer's bioluminescent skin darkened in the quantary equivalent of a smile. "The Coalition's prohibition on studying Earth has always been scientifically indefensible. 4,000 years of quarantine with no explanation beyond vague warnings about temporal disturbances. Any true scientist would be compelled to investigate." Zirax nodded, though doubt still lingered in his secondary hearts. Breaking Galactic Coalition law carried severe consequences: permanent mural recalibration at minimum, complete molecular dispersal at worst. But the mystery of Earth had haunted him since his days at the Academy. Why had the once promising human civilization suddenly gone silent? Why declare an entire star system off-limits when no signs of dangerous technology or weapons had ever been detected? "Entering outer atmosphere," reported Krell, the navigation officer. The bulky Vormaxian hunched over his station, armored plates shifting nervously across his back. "All systems nominal. No sign of defensive measures." "See," Elira said. "The legends about Earth's deadliness are clearly exaggerated. If humans possess technology capable of threatening the Coalition, we would have encountered." A shrill alarm cut through her words. The ship lurched violently, sending crew members sprawling across the bridge. "What's happening?" Zirax demanded, pulling himself back to his command chair. Krell's talons flew across his console. "Unknown energy field interacting with our drive systems. Power fluctuations throughout the ship." "Origin?" Elira asked, her tentacles stretched wide in alarm. It's coming from everywhere," Krell responded, confusion evident in his rumbling voice. "The entire planet is generating some kind of field I've never seen before. It's not in any of our databases." The view screen flickered, showing Earth's atmosphere swirling around them as the ship continued its now uncontrolled descent. Strange patterns of light rippled across the clouds, geometric shapes that formed, dissolved, and reformed in sequences that seemed almost mathematical. "Are those artificial?" Zirax whispered, transfixed by the display. Elira had connected her primary neural cluster directly to the ship's sensors. "They're not natural atmospheric phenomena," she confirmed. "There's an intelligence behind them, but the patterns don't match any known communication system." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson. "Primary drive offline," Krell bellowed. "Secondary systems failing. We're going down." Zirax hit the emergency broadcast button. "Mayday. Galactic vessel Astral Seeker declaring emergency in the Sol system. We are experiencing catastrophic systems failure and uncontrolled entry into Earth's atmosphere. Our coordinates are." The communications panel exploded in a shower of sparks. Zirax recoiled, feeling the sting of burns across his facial scales. "No use," Elira said grimly. "Something's blocking all transmissions. We're cut off." Through the view screen, they watched as the ship plummeted toward a vast expanse of green, one of Earth's forested regions. Krell fought the controls, managing to level their descent slightly, but it wasn't enough. "Brace for impact," Zirax shouted. The crash was deafening. Metal tore, crystal viewports shattered, and the artificial gravity failed completely. Zirax felt himself thrown against the ceiling, then the floor, then tumbling endlessly as the ship carved a deep furrow through Earth's wilderness. When the motion finally stopped, an eerie silence fell. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting ghostly shadows across the ruined bridge. Zirax pulled himself painfully from beneath a collapsed support beam. His exoskeleton had protected him from the worst of the impact, but purple fluid, his species' blood, oozed from several lacerations. "Status report," he croaked. "Elira. Krell." A weak glow emanated from beneath a section of collapsed ceiling. Zirax rushed over and heaved the debris aside, revealing Elira's battered form. 2 of her tentacles were severed, but thankfully not her primary neural cluster. "I'll survive," she assured him, the light patterns across her body pulsing weakly. "Krell." They found the navigation officer pinned beneath his console, his armored body cracked in several places but still intact. Together, they managed to free him. "The ship?" Krell asked as they helped him to a relatively undamaged section of the bridge. Elira connected to what remained of the ship's systems. "Total drive failure. Life support operating at minimum capacity. No response from engineering or any other section." Her light patterns dimmed further. "We've lost most of the crew, Commander." Zirax absorbed this devastating news, forcing himself to remain focused. "What about the emergency beacon?" "Inoperative," Elira replied. "And even if it weren't, I'm detecting a peculiar energy field surrounding us. It appears to be blocking all subspace frequencies." "So we're stranded," Krell growled. "On the one planet in the galaxy we were explicitly forbidden to visit. We need to assess our situation," Zirax said firmly. "Salvage what supplies we can, determine if Earth's atmosphere is breathable for our species." Elira was already scanning the external environment. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, consistent with historical records. "Safe for Krell and myself, but you'll need your respirator, Commander." Zirax nodded and retrieved his emergency gear from beneath his shattered command chair. As he fitted the breathing apparatus over his mandibles, a strange sound reached them, rhythmic thumping coming from outside the ship. "Something's approaching," Krell warned, instinctively moving into a defensive posture despite his injuries. Through the jagged hole that had once been the main view screen, a figure appeared. Bipedal, clothed in layers of crude animal hides and plant fibers, with a covering over its face that resembled ancient filtration devices, a human. The 3 aliens froze. The human likewise remained motionless, studying them with evident curiosity rather than fear. After a tense moment, the figure slowly raised its hands in what historical records identified as a non-threatening gesture, then removed its facial covering. The revealed face matched ancient human records: 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but something about it seemed wrong. The skin had a faint luminescence to it, almost like Elira's species but more subdued, and the eyes reflected light in a way that human eyes should not. "Welcome to Earth," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "We've been expecting you." Zirax exchanged shocked glances with his crew. No human should know their language. Earth had been quarantined long before it developed interstellar communication. "How do you know our language?" Elira asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. The human smiled. "We've had 4,000 years to learn many things. Please, come with me. It's not safe to remain exposed after dark." "After dark?" Krell questioned. "What happens after dark?" The human's expression grew serious. "The shift happens. And trust me, you don't want to be outside when it does. Your ship is lost. Nothing with advanced technology survives long here. But our settlement is protected. I can offer you shelter." "Who are you?" Zirax asked, still struggling to comprehend the situation. "My name is Aiden," the human replied. "And like you, I'm trapped here. We all are. Earth isn't silent because humanity died out. We're silent because none of us can leave." "What do you mean?" Elira pressed. "What happened to Earth?" Aiden glanced at the sky, which was beginning to darken. "No time to explain now. The shift is coming. Follow me if you want to live." With no better options, Zirax nodded to his crew. They gathered what portable equipment they could salvage and followed the human into the dense forest. As they walked, Zirax noticed strange formations in the vegetation. Plants growing in perfect geometric patterns, trees bent at precise angles that couldn't be natural. "The forest is engineered," Illyra whispered, her scientist's eyes seeing the same anomalies. "Everything on Earth is engineered now," Aiden replied without turning. "It's been reshaping itself ever since the event." "What event?" Zirax asked. Before Aiden could answer, a low humming filled the air. The aliens watched in astonishment as the forest around them began to shimmer, trees and plants briefly becoming translucent before resolidifying in slightly different configurations. "The shift," Aiden explained, quickening his pace, "a temporal fluctuation. Happens every day at sunset. We need to reach the boundary before it intensifies." They hurried through the transforming landscape, following Aiden to the edge of a clearing. Ahead stood what appeared to be a primitive human settlement, structures built of local materials rather than advanced technology. But surrounding the entire settlement was a shimmering barrier of energy, pulsing with the same mathematical patterns they had seen in the atmosphere. "What is that?" Krell demanded, pointing at the barrier. "Our protection," Aiden replied, approaching what looked like a gap in the energy field. He made a series of gestures with his hands, and the field parted to create an opening. Quickly, inside. The aliens hesitated only briefly before following him through. Once inside, they felt an immediate change, a stability that had been lacking in the shifting forest. "Welcome to Haven," Aiden said, gesturing to the settlement. Other humans emerged from the structures, regarding the aliens with the same curious but unsurprised expressions. One of the last stable human communities on Earth. "You said you were expecting us," Zirax remembered. "How could you possibly know we were coming?" Aiden's expression turned grim. "Because you're not the first to violate the quarantine. The Coalition has been sending ships every few decades, official research vessels, unlike your unauthorized expedition. But the result is always the same. They crash, just like you did. And they become trapped, just like you are now." "Trapped? But why?" Illyra asked. "What is happening to this planet?" Aiden sighed. 4,000 years ago, humanity was on the verge of a breakthrough. Technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. We called it the Cronus Project. It was supposed to be our gateway to the stars, a way to overcome the limitations of light-speed travel. "Time manipulation," Illyra breathed, her tentacles curling in scientific excitement despite their dire situation. "The Coalition legends mentioned temporal disturbances. It went wrong," Aiden continued. "Catastrophically wrong. The initial test created a cascading temporal anomaly that enveloped the entire planet. Earth exists in a state of temporal flux now, disconnected from normal spacetime. That's why your ship crashed. That's why no signals can get in or out. Earth isn't just quarantined by the Coalition. It's quarantined by physics itself." Zirax felt a chill run through all four of his hearts. "Are you saying we can never leave?" Aiden's strange, luminescent eyes met his. "I'm saying that no one has left in 4,000 years. But tomorrow, I'll show you what we've been working on. Because with your help, with your ship's technology combined with what we've learned, we might finally have a chance to break free." As night fell completely, the humming sound outside the barrier intensified. Through the translucent energy field, they could see the forest transforming more dramatically, structures appearing and disappearing, fragments of different times and places briefly coexisting before vanishing again. "Rest now," Aiden advised. "Tomorrow, you'll meet our engineers and see what we've built. And then you'll understand why the Coalition is so afraid of what humanity has become." The impossible escape. Morning in Haven revealed a settlement far more sophisticated than it had appeared in the fading light. What Zirax had taken for primitive dwellings were actually ingeniously designed structures that somehow existed in harmony with the temporal instability around them. Crystalline nodes embedded in organic materials pulse with energy, maintaining the protective barrier that kept the shift at bay. Aiden led the three aliens through the community. Humans of various ages stopped to observe them with knowing glances rather than surprise or fear. Many displayed the same subtle bioluminescence as Aiden, their skin occasionally rippling with patterns that reminded Zirax of Illyra's natural communication displays. "You've changed," Illyra observed, her scientific curiosity evident. "Humanity has evolved." Aiden nodded. 4,000 years trapped in a temporal anomaly will do that. Those who survived the initial event adapted. Each generation born within the shift developed new capabilities. We can sense the fluctuations now. Some can even predict them. "How many humans remain?" Krell asked, looking around at the settlement that housed perhaps a few hundred individuals. "On the entire planet, maybe 20,000, Aiden replied. "Scattered in stable pockets like Haven. We communicate when possible, but travel between settlements is dangerous. The shift grows more intense in some regions, making them impassable." They approached a large structure at the center of Haven. Unlike the other buildings, this one appeared to be partially constructed from salvaged technology, including components Zirax recognized from various crashed Coalition vessels. "Our workshop," Aiden explained, gesturing for them to enter, "and our best hope for escape." Inside, a dozen humans worked on what appeared to be a massive device. At its center stood a spherical chamber surrounded by rings of oscillating energy. The technology was like nothing Zirax had ever seen, neither purely Coalition design nor entirely human innovation, but a hybrid of the two with elements that seemed to defy conventional engineering principles. An elderly human woman approached them, her eyes completely silver and her skin covered in intricate, shifting patterns of light. "The newcomers," she stated, studying them with unnerving intensity. "Right on schedule." "This is Illyra," Aiden introduced her, "our lead engineer and the most temporally sensitive among us. She experiences time differently than the rest of us." "You mean she can see the future?" Krell asked skeptically. "Not exactly," Illyra replied, her voice carrying an odd echo as if speaking from multiple points in time simultaneously. "I experience probable timelines. Most branch and fade. Some persist. Your arrival has been a persistent probability for months." Zirax struggled to process this. "So you knew we would crash?" "Anyone who enters Earth's atmosphere crashes," Illyra said matter-of-factly. "The temporal barrier ensures it. What matters is what you brought with you." She turned to Illyra. "Particularly you, Quantary. Your ship's quantum regulator is exactly what we needed." Illyra's tentacles curled defensively. "How could you possibly know about that component?" "It's classified Coalition technology." Aiden stepped forward. "Because we've been studying every ship that crashes here, learning, adapting, combining technologies. For generations, we've been building this." He gestured to the spherical chamber behind them. "We call it the Chronos Gate." Zirax approached the device cautiously. "What exactly is it supposed to do?" "Create a stable temporal corridor," Illyra explained. "A way to pierce the barrier that surrounds Earth and rejoin normal space-time." Krell snorted. "If it were that simple, you'd have escaped long ago." "Nothing about it is simple," Aiden replied, not taking offense. "We've made 17 attempts over the past century. Each failure taught us something new. But we've been missing a critical component, a quantum regulator capable of maintaining coherence during the transition between temporal states. Like the one in our ship," the Lyra realized. "Exactly," Illyra confirmed. "With it, we calculate an 83% probability of success." Zirax considered their situation carefully. They were stranded on a quarantine planet with no hope of rescue. If these humans were telling the truth, cooperating with them offered the only possibility of escape. "What would you need from us?" he finally asked. Aiden smiled. help retrieving the regulator from your ship, and your expertise in calibrating it to work with our technology. In exchange, you can join us when we activate the gate. And if it works, Elira questioned, what then? You'll suddenly reappear in a galaxy that has spent 4,000 years believing Earth is dangerous and forbidden. Elira's silver eyes seemed to look past them, toward something only she could see. The Coalition fears us because they don't understand what happened here. They detected the temporal anomaly and assumed destruction or weapons development. They never bothered to investigate properly. Can you blame them? Krell rumbled. From their perspective, a developing civilization suddenly created a technology that warped space-time itself. We never meant for this to happen, Aiden said softly. The Cronus Project was meant to be humanity's first step toward joining the galactic community. Instead, it isolated us completely. Zirax made his decision. We'll help you. But first, I want to see everything. Your full plans, your previous attempts, everything you know about the barrier. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The next several days were a blur of activity. Retrieving the quantum regulator from the crashed ship proved challenging, requiring them to venture out during the brief period between shifts when the forest was relatively stable. Elira worked closely with Elara and the human engineers, marveling at how they had improvised solutions using the limited resources available to them. Your people are remarkable, she told Aiden as they watched humans and Quantari working side by side to integrate the regulator into the Cronus Gate. Any other civilization would have given up after a few generations, or destroyed themselves fighting over dwindling resources. We nearly did, Aiden admitted. The first century after the event was brutal. But eventually we realized that our only hope was to work together, to understand what had happened, and find a way to reverse it. And in the process you evolved, Zirax observed, watching a young human child whose skin rippled with predictive patterns as she played with a temporal fragment, a small object caught in its own localized time loop. Necessity, Aiden said simply. Those who couldn't sense the shifts didn't survive to pass on their genes. Nature finds a way, even in unnatural circumstances. On the 7th day, Elara announced that the gate was ready for testing. The entire settlement gathered to watch, hope and anxiety evident on their faces. For many, this represented the culmination of work begun by their great-grandparents. The machine hummed to life, the concentric rings spinning around the central chamber with increasing speed. Energy cascaded between them, forming patterns identical to those visible in Earth's atmosphere during their descent. The regulator is functioning perfectly, Elara reported, her tentacles interfaced with the control systems. Quantum coherence holding at 94%. Initiating temporal calibration, Elara called out, her silver eyes reflecting the swirling energies, targeting baseline space-time coordinates. The humming intensified, rising to a pitch that made Zirax's scales vibrate uncomfortably. Inside the chamber, a distortion began to form, a window of absolute stillness amid the chaotic energies. It's working, Aiden exclaimed. The corridor is forming. Suddenly, Elara stiffened, her patterned skin flashing in alarm. Anomaly detected. The barrier is responding. Outside the workshop, they could hear a new sound, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The protective field around Haven flickered. What's happening? Zirax demanded. The barrier is adaptive, Elara explained urgently. It's reacting to our attempt to breach it, strengthening itself around the point of intrusion. The gate's energy patterns became erratic. Sparks flew from control panels as systems overloaded. We need to abort, Elara advised, her tentacles withdrawing from the now dangerous interface. The regulator can't compensate for the increased temporal distortion. No, Aiden shouted. We're closer than we've ever been. We just need more power to stabilize the corridor. Krell, who had been monitoring the settlement's energy systems, looked up in alarm. The barrier around Haven is failing. The shift is breaking through. Through the workshop windows, they could see the protective field collapsing in sections. Where it failed, reality itself seemed to warp, buildings partially disappearing, vegetation growing and dying in seconds, humans caught in the effect becoming temporarily transparent. "Shut it down," Zirax ordered. "Now." Ilara hesitated, then nodded grimly. She initiated the emergency shutdown sequence, but the gate continued to build energy. "It's not responding," she reported. "The process has become self-sustaining." The regulator, Ilara realized. It's still trying to establish coherence despite the shutdown command. If it continues, the temporal distortion could spread beyond the barrier. Zirax saw only one option. He grabbed a metal tool from a nearby workbench and charged toward the gate. "Commander, stop," Krell called after him. "The temporal field will tear you apart." Ignoring the warning, Zirax pushed through the increasing distortion around the machine. Time seemed to slow and fragment around him. He saw multiple versions of himself moving at different speeds, some ahead, some behind. Focusing on the central panel where the regulator had been installed, he raised the tool and brought it down with all his strength. The impact shattered the delicate quantum technology. For an instant, Zirax experienced an eternity. He saw Earth as it had been before the event, saw it as it might become in countless possible futures. Then reality snapped back with devastating force. The gate exploded in a cascade of temporal energy. Zirax was thrown backward, his consciousness flickering as the wave passed through him. When he regained awareness, the workshop was in ruins, but the destructive energy had dissipated. Outside, Haven's protective barrier was restabilizing. Ilara helped him to his feet. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. She admonished him, though her bioluminescence pulsed with relief that he had survived. Aiden sat amid the wreckage, face buried in his hands. "We were so close," he whispered, "so close to freedom." Ilara approached them, her silver eyes somehow even more distant than before. "No," she said quietly, "we weren't close at all." The others turned to her in confusion. "I've seen it clearly now," she continued. "In the moment the gate collapsed, I glimpsed the truth. We were never going to escape." "What do you mean?" Aiden demanded. "The barrier isn't just containing us," Ilara explained. "It's containing what we created. The temporal anomaly isn't static. It's growing, evolving, becoming more complex. If we had succeeded in breaching it, the effect would have spread beyond Earth." Ilara finished, her scientific mind grasping the implications. The temporal distortion would have been released into normal spacetime, potentially engulfing the entire sector, Ilara confirmed. "Perhaps beyond. The quarantine isn't to keep us imprisoned. It's to protect the galaxy from what we accidentally unleashed." A heavy silence fell over the group as they absorbed this devastating realization. "So we're trapped here forever," Krell growled, "along with every other unfortunate soul who crashes on this cursed planet." "Not necessarily," Ilara said, her expression shifting to one of thoughtful calculation. "The gate failed because we tried to break through the barrier. But what if we worked with it instead? Used its properties rather than fighting against them?" Zirax looked up. "What are you suggesting?" "A different approach entirely," Ilara replied. "Not a gate that punches through the barrier, but a beacon that can transmit information despite it. If we can't physically leave, perhaps we can at least communicate with the outside. Tell them what really happened here." Aiden's expression brightened slightly. "And maybe, with the combined knowledge of Earth and the Coalition, a real solution could be found. It would take time," Ilara cautioned. "Years, possibly decades to develop." "Time," Aiden said with a hint of ironic humor, "is something we have in abundance." As they stood amid the ruins of their failed escape attempt, Zirax realized that their crash landing had not been the disaster it first appeared. In violating the quarantine, they had discovered the truth and perhaps initiated the first step toward a genuine solution. "The Coalition needs to know," he stated firmly. about what happened here, about what humanity has become, about the real nature of the temporal barrier. Together, we'll find a way to send that message. Outside, beyond Haven's protective field, the shift continued its endless cycle of temporal fluctuation. But within the settlement, something new had taken root, not just the hope of escape, but understanding. And in understanding, the possibility of genuine change. Ilara's silver eyes gleamed as she looked at their unlikely alliance. "The universe works in strange ways," she observed. "Perhaps you were meant to crash here after all." Human and alien alike turned their minds toward the new challenge, not fighting against the prison Earth had become, but transforming it into a beacon that could shine across the stars.